Charter Trustees, ladies and gentlemen, officers, would you please be upstanding to receive the Worshipful Mayor of Poole.
Hello everyone. Thank you for being here. I'd like to welcome the Charter Trustees to this meeting of the Poole Charter Trustees and to the press and members of the public. Please note that this meeting is being recorded for live and subsequent broadcasts and will be published on the Council website for a minimum of 6 months. In order to ensure the meeting is managed effectively, please could everyone present follow these ground rules for speaking. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand physically to indicate. Wired microphones have been provided. If a councillor wishes to speak and is not sat at a seat that has a wired microphone, a radio microphone will be provided. Councillors are requested to maintain social distancing and wear a mask or visor for the duration of the meeting and while in the BIC. When a councillor wishes to speak, they can remove their mask but must maintain social distancing and replace their mask when they have finished speaking. Hand sanitisers are also available and should be used as appropriate. Where there appears to be consensus in the meeting for a motion, I will ask if there is any dissension. When a formal vote is required, this will be carried out by a show of hands. Councillors are advised that the live stream of the meeting may include shots of councillors who are not speaking at that time. Evacuation details will be provided as appropriate by officers. I will ask the Honorary Clerk to report the apologies received for this meeting.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Apologies have been received from the following councillors: Councillor Daniel Butt, Councillor Judy Butt, Councillor Brian Dion, Councillor LJ Evans, who has asked to say that she is absent due to COVID legislation, Councillor Marion Lepedovin, Councillor Chris Matthews, Councillor Karen Rampton and Councillor Tony Trent.
Thank you. Honorary Clerk, can you report on any declarations of interest received, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. None have been received to date.
Thank you. Can we have confirmation of minutes and matters arising? Charter Trustees are asked to receive the minutes of the meeting held on the 27th of January and 21st of May 2021 and to consider any matters arising. I will... Diana, Councillor Butler, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. It was just matters arising. The working group for the Civic was formed last time and we've had a meeting on the 12th of March, just to update people.
Thank you very much, Councillor Butler. Right, I will update the Charter Trustees on my recent activities, which are... Sorry. It's not mine, okay, my first event was opening the play area at Poole Park. It was really good and very difficult, I'd say, play area to get around. I take my hat off to anyone that manages to do all of it, to be fair. But it was a really nice event and I thank the volunteers that had helped do everything they'd done and obviously the people that had built it. On Wednesday the 9th of June I had the royal visit. It's the first time Prince Charles has officially visited Poole and I was honoured to attend that at the RNLI. Friday the 11th of June I was invited to Millennium House. What a brilliant job that BCHA do in helping the residents that live there to move forward with their lives. It's life learning skills that they're helped with. On Saturday the 12th of June I attended the surgery at Sainsbury's Alder Hills. I think it's Shaw surgery or something. I had the personal opportunity to thank the staff and the volunteers who are doing the work and vaccinating everyone, and they need volunteers in case anyone has anyone they know that could get there and help. And Monday the 21st, myself, Councillor Hedges and Councillor Kelsey raised the flag in honour of our armed services for Armed Services Day. The chairman, Councillor Hedges, raised the flag, but with David and I in attendance. And that's my list of things so far. Not very many, but all really good, and I enjoyed them immensely. Thank you. Okay, now, may I call on Dan Povey, the responsible financial officer, to present this report, the Charter Trustees 2021 Internal Audit Report, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Oh, well done.
Good evening, Charter Trustees. This agenda item is the review, the summary of the review that internal auditors have done on the internal controls and governance for the Charter Trustees, and it will hopefully aid the agenda item number 7 when we ask the Charter Trustees to approve the accountability and governance return, which includes something called the annual governance statement. That statement is an assessment built on internal audit's review of the governance arrangements of the Charter Trustees. If I could perhaps ask you to turn to page I think it's 17 on the agenda papers. It's the internal control objectives, a blue table with a green column in the middle. This really is the key page, I think, in the internal audit report, and it shows the list of controls that the audit were asked to assess, their standard controls, and you'll see that happily all of the ones that are applicable are either substantial or reasonable audit assurance, which means that in the main they are operating well. The only one which is not is the third one down, where there is partial assurance on basically risk management within the Charter Trustee governance. Now, of course, in the January meeting, the Charter Trustees did approve the risk register, and it was an agenda item during the year that was reviewed. The reason why it's partial on the audit review was for the simple matter that it wasn't in place for the entire financial year. You know, it was only formally in place from January. Going on next year, I fully expect us to have reasonable, substantial for all of the applicable controls. That's the headline. We'll see this in a different format again later on in the agenda. There is some more detail in terms of management responses and actions to take in the report for some of the areas where you know, controls could be improved. But Madam Mayor, I'll stop there and happily take any questions.
Thank you, Dan. Anyone have any questions for Dan? Councillor Brooks, please.
Fine, thank you, Madam Mayor. It's actually the issue regarding credit cards and evidence. It does seem to me that clearly that was quite a high risk situation. You say that all credit card transactions must include appropriate evidence and from immediate effect. Can you outline exactly what has been done to ensure that all the appropriate evidence is going to be provided in the future?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I will actually hand over, if I can, to my colleague Karen Tompkins, who is operationally manages the collection of that evidence, so she would be best placed to reply.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Brooke. And obviously, we are continually reviewing our operational arrangements and specifically around that particular issue. And it's just it's a general reminder to staff to ensure if they are using credit cards that they need to make sure that all the necessary receipts and completion of paperwork is undertaken. So that reflects what's in the management response on that particular issue. And we've done that as a matter of urgency.
Anyone else have any questions? No? Perfect. Then we go on to agenda item 6, or do I need to make that signed off?
So just confirm that.
Is everyone in favour of us passing that? Item 5. Perfect. Thank you very much. That's passed. Right, the budget outturn report 2020-2021. I call on Dan Povey, responsible financial officer, to present this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, this agenda item is really, it's an informational item and will hopefully oil the wheels again for when we're looking at the annual governance statement, which include the summary accounts that we ask the Charter Trustees to approve today. I think if we cast our minds back a year, when we first brought the first year's annual governance return, it was rightly noted that they are very abridged, the financial statements. They basically have a couple of rows of the expenditure, employee expenses and other, and we agreed at that meeting that that wasn't really enough information for Charter Trustees to really judge on the financial budget performance for the year. So we brought back a full outturn report in October for that year. So this year we've improved on that, and we asked the Charter Trustees to consider the detail of the budget before approving the governance return. If I could ask the Charter Trustees please to go to sort of paragraph 3 onwards. Throughout the year in our budget monitoring, we've been forecasting obviously a significant underspend due to the pandemic, with the activities of the Charter Trustees seriously curtailed. In January, when we did the last update, we were forecasting a £31,657 underspend. And you'll see in paragraph 4 that the year end is very close to that, £28,647. So they're mainly savings against supplies and services, hospitality and civic budgets. And in actual fact, the main charges that the Charter Trustees have had is the staff and accommodation support and recharges from BCP Council. Appendix A gives the full detail on a budget by budget line heading of the spend against the budget, and that shows expenditure of £77,303. That agrees to the annual governance return that we'll be asking Charter Trustees to approve in due course. I think probably one of the key messages really is in the table at figure 1 at the bottom of page 24. So because of the £28,000 underspend and the £19,000 that we actually budgeted to contribute to reserves, there's been a total contribution to reserves just shy of £48,000, which means as of the end of March 2021, the Charter Trustees had just over £85,000 of reserves at their disposal. That is carried forward into the 21-22 financial year, when the budget shows we'll be contributing about another £1,000 to that. So we're going to have around 70-71% of the annual precept in reserves, and there's a little bit of narrative around that in paragraphs 9 and 10. When we set the budget for the current financial year, it was my advice that a prudent level would be somewhere around 20% of the precept. That's about £25,000. So the Charter Trustees have got, some not insignificant reserves at their disposal, which they could take the opportunity to decide how they want to utilise them. I think that's, in excess of what you need to keep on a prudent basis. It's your decision what you do with that reserve money. And the reason why I say 20% is a prudent level is because nigh on 2/3 of your annual budget is taken up with recharges of BCP Council. And of course, they are not subject to fluctuation. They are agreed and they are budgeted for, and they will be, nigh on paid on the nose. So I think there is opportunity there for the Charter Trustees to see how they want to utilise that. I will stop there, Madam Mayor, and take any questions.
Thank you, Dan. Councillor Slade has a question for you, I do believe. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got a couple of questions. The first one, could you remind us, because I think this may have been resolved earlier in the year, but I can't remember the outcome. One of the reasons we were carrying heavy reserves was because of the potential VAT reclaim. Has that now been resolved and therefore is no longer needed? Is my first question.
Shall I take them one by one?
I'm quite happy to give you all of them if you like,
Okay.
and then, yeah. So that was my first question, because obviously that affects how much we need to hold. My second question relates to transport. We were told at the BCP overview of scrutiny last week that the proposed new mayoral cars that are being proposed for 22-23, and I think you know my view on that, Madam Mayor. The proposed two mayoral cars, it was okay to buy them because actually the Charter Trustees paid to use them if they were being bought by BCP. The budget for vehicle hire was £750 for this year, which doesn't sound to me like the sort of amount that we would have expected in the budget to have paid BCP. That sounds like a sort of external vehicle hire. But I can't see a line in here that suggests how much we would expect in a normal year to pay BCP for the use of a mayoral car owned by BCP. So I think that's absolutely relevant if we're looking to spend £90,000 as BCP. How much is Charter Trustees going to pay back each year? And my third one is more to the Mayor. What is the proposal, or what is the timeline for us to consider whether we do want to do a one-off spend from that reserves for something like a memorial around COVID or the Platinum Jubilee or something else, and what's the governance arrangements for how we make that decision and who we consult with? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Slade. I'm going to hand over to my honorary clerk for the answers to that one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman. I think we don't have detailed procedures for doing that, so I'm wondering if we should bring a report to the next meeting that sets out some of those procedures. I think certainly, what I think Charter Trustees wouldn't want to see is just the reserve being used as general spend. You have an opportunity to do something particular with it. I think the idea of commemoration, something around COVID, because it has had a major impact on the community, or indeed the Jubilee, would be very useful. So I wonder if we can bring a paper to the next meeting that gives some options for how to do that.
I'd be happy for that to be done. Thank you. Everybody else? Anyone else? Would that please everyone? Yeah. Report then, please, Bill.
Madam Mayor, could I ask for Mr Povey to respond to my questions?
Sorry,
That's
yes,
okay.
sorry.
Before it gets lost.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So yes, on the VAT issue, the outturn figures that you've got in Appendix A for the spend, they include any VAT that the Charter Trustees would be incurring up to November 2020, which was the point where we did get the Section 33 status for the Charter Trustees. So in effect, none of the reserves need to be put aside for VAT. So that's the answer to that's quite straightforward. For the cars, what I would say is, yes, I mean, we haven't had a normal year for car hire car expenses. We've only spent £16 this year. The budget for the current financial year in total for transport is £2,500 when you include the fuel and the hire and the vehicle maintenance and repairs. And actually, I don't think, seeing as the Charter Trustees won't be owning the car, they will be hiring it. You know, you can effectively via the vehicle maintenance into the vehicle hire. But as I say, in total you've got £2,500 for cars, and I'd suggest we use that. If we need to rebalance the budget going forward next year, we can, if that turns out not to be enough.
Would you mind if I
Councillor
come back?
Slade.
I feel I need to move on. I totally understand the vehicle maintenance and repairs. It's not appropriate if we're only hiring the car, so that feels like that shouldn't be a line. But if the amount of time that historically, I mean, when this budget was set, we had no expectation that COVID was going to carry on through another year. And if the car is going to be used at the same level as we heard during scrutiny it had been used in previous years, I would have expected a reasonable, I think the public purse should expect that BCP would get a reasonable higher rate from the Charter Trustees. If they're using it 300 times a year, there is no way £750 is an appropriate figure unless you are using a barrel bike. And even then, I don't think you'd get that for a barrel bike. So I just think that figure just doesn't feel reasonable for a hire arrangement that's fair on the public purse of the BCP residents. It looks very good for the residents of the Charter Trustees, though.
Thank you, Councillor Slade. Could you answer, Dan, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just looking at what we spent in 2019-20, which I suppose is the closest we had to a normal year, just to add it up in my head, 2,174 was what we spent on fuel and vehicle hire. We spent 1,753 on vehicle hire. So clearly the 750 on its own for vehicle hire is not enough. But I think if you take that budget as a whole, it gives us a fighting chance. But of course, with all these things, it's a new organisation. We can tweak the budgets as we go through to make sure that there is a provision there to pay that equitable charge.
Are you happy, Councillor Slade, with that answer?
As happy as I'm going to be.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dan. Is Councillor Andrews first, and then Councillor Stribley? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. The Honourary Clerk made mention in response to one of Councillor Slade's inquiries about perhaps coming back to a future meeting what this excess money could be spent on. I see in paragraph 10 of the report on page 25, there was set up, following our meeting in January, a working party to consider what that money could be invested in or spent on, and presumably obviously to report back to the next meeting, which is today. So can it be explained whether that working party has been set up? Obviously the new mayor would be on that working party, presumably, because obviously if it hasn't met or has only met once, can that working party over the next few weeks, because I don't think our next meeting is until October, meet together and to consider what to do or to do nothing in terms of what that excess money could be invested in? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. I think Ms Tompkins is going to answer.
Yeah, thank you for your question, Councillor Andrews. You're absolutely right. As referenced in the papers, it was agreed back in January that you would establish a working party. That working party has not yet met. If it is the wish of the Charter Trustees that we continue, we undertake that as a matter of urgency, we can obviously establish that, go out to all Charter Trustees to seek membership and get that up and running. But it's not met at this particular point. So obviously if it does, if it is up and running, then we can pick up the issues that have been raised by Councillor Slade.
It might be a good idea if it met, because we have this excess sum of money and we will get people saying, what have you got that 86, 90 odd £1,000 doing in your bank, doing nothing, you know, give it back to us, or how are your plans on what you're going to do with it? Councillor Slade's mentioned the Platinum Jubilee, possibly, I don't know, eat up all that sum of money. You know, it could well be that the working party may want to report back that the precept for a future financial year is reduced, perhaps. I don't know. But that's, I would urge that perhaps the working party is established, and you know, clearly the mayor should be on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. I do believe that's what we're going to be doing, isn't it? Councillor Stribley, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As we're talking about the mayoral cars or hiring in a car for the mayor, I understand APR1 was disposed of. Now, the vehicle itself wouldn't have been worth a lot, but it should have been worth a few £1,000s. But the registration number would have been worth considerably more. I would like to know how much we received from that, not necessarily this minute, and I would like to know where that money is. Is that part of the 86,000 we've got in reserves? Because the car and the registration belonged, in fact, to the Civic Party and, as far as I'm aware, the Charter of Trustees. So it shouldn't, in my opinion, have been removed elsewhere into other funds. I have to disagree with my colleague opposite. I don't think there's any such thing as excess money. We may have a little more than we need to spend at the moment, but there will always be something coming down the line when the Charter of Trustees are looking for something significant and won't want to go to the public purse. If there is a reserve, that will be extremely useful. But I also agree with the comments that £750 will never cut the higher price for a mayor in anything near a normal year's activities. So I would be interested to know where those, how much we got for the car, and separately I trust with the registration. And I would be expecting our chief executive to be chasing elsewhere if that wasn't dealt with properly.
Thank you, Councillor Stribley.
Thank you.
Honorary Clerk, going to give us a response.
So we'll happily take up the details of that, because I do remember previous discussions at these meetings, so I will take it back and find out unless Richard can answer. Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, Mr Jones.
So, members, and thank you, Councillor Stribley, for the question. In terms of the vehicle, it was, I believe it was scrapped. I think it was virtually nil value in terms of the actual car. In terms of the number plate, that is held, it is held unregistered to a vehicle, so it hasn't been disposed of. That is still an asset. In 2019, all assets were transferred to BCP Council, so it's in the name of BCP Council. What the question that we were going to take away, and we haven't got to the bottom of the, if you like, the history of APR1, that is still being investigated, so we haven't got to the bottom of that, but I can assure you that number plate has not been disposed of. It is still an asset that we hold.
Councillor Stribley, would you like to go back to...
Sorry, I'm a bit concerned if what I think we would all consider an asset of the Charter Trustees has simply been transferred to BCP Council.
I totally agree.
The car, and however little it was still running well, and I think it would be worth a considerable amount somewhere. Maybe only 4,000 or 5,000, but still more than 400 or 500.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, I'm concerned as to why that didn't come back to the Charter of Trustees, but that's not for discussion here. I accept that.
No, Councillor Stribley, I was just going to say that I think on its last voyage out with Mayor Gabriel and the drivers, it kind of, a tea party in London, it kind of did its final death march, and it was viewed that it was too expensive to repair, and so it was sold to auction or wherever. However, I do totally agree with you that I don't believe the money from the number plate or the number plate should be held by BCP Council. I do believe it's a Poole car, it's a Poole number plate, and I'd quite like us to get to the nitty-gritty of that one, because we all need to know exactly where we stand, as we can't have a bit of one and a bit of the other and none of it matching. So that's for us to do. Right, are we all happy with... Oh no, sorry, Councillor Brooks. Sorry, Councillor Brooks.
Fine, thank you, Madam Mayor. In a former life, I spent a lot of my time looking at budgets, and especially in terms of printing and photocopying. As the head of a large faculty, it was the bugbear of my life. It is only a small thing, but actually when you look at the administration and running costs in Appendix A, you'll note that printing and photocopying in the forecast was double the actual amount budgeted, and in the actual outturn was actually 10 times that was budgeted. Now, it seems to me that in a year when we have not had a lot of mayoral activity, such an overspend of a budget that was allocated is something rather exceptional. Either we got the budgeting wrong, or there's been a lot of expenditure that no one thought would ever happen. So, and that might be because we're newly formed. But I would like some sort of response to explain how the £50 budget becomes over £500 on just printing and photocopying. I know it's only a small item in the total budget, but actually, if we look after the pennies, the pounds apparently look after themselves.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. I'm sure Dan will manage to answer that question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Indeed, it was exceptional expenditure. When we came to the Charter Trustee meeting in January, the Charter Trustees approved the new bank mandates and financial regulations. And as part of us, because before that, the Charter Trustees were piggybacking on the Council, BCP Council's financial regulations, which wasn't appropriate going forward. As part of implementing that new banking mandate, bank account and financial regs, we got printed a series of receipt books for the Charter Trustee in its own name, and order books, and this relates to that one-off expenditure. We've got a good stock of them in now. It was to implement the financial regs that were approved in January 2021 towards the end of the financial year, and that expenditure won't now be repeated for several years. That could have been, as it was one-off, it could have been an item that we did go to the reserves to fund as a one-off item, but in the end it all comes out to the same thing because it's all the Charter Trustees' money, and we were looking at a big underspend. We've charged it there. The contribution to reserves is slightly less, but the Charter Trustees end up in exactly the same place financially. So in short, it was exceptional expenditure for the receipt books that we had to get printed.
Thank you for that answer, Dan. Has anyone got any more questions? No? Is everyone happy to agree to this? Thank you. No, not everybody, or everybody? I'm not working it out yet. Okay, everybody is happy. That's perfect. Thank you so much. Right, we're now on the agenda item 7, sorry. The annual government statement 2020-2021, and I call on Dan Poole, responsible financial officer, to present the annual governance statement, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this is really the document, this and I think the next agenda item, which is to approve the accounts. The last two agenda items, the internal audit report and the outturn report, have been working up to this. The annual governance and accountability return is on page, I can't quite tell you because it's been obscured. Is it 29? Yeah, page 29 of the agenda papers. And this is a set format. Any organisation who spends more than 25,000 but less than 6.5 million. And really, this agenda item is asking the Charter Trustees to approve what you see on page 31, which is the internal audit report, which is, you can see, is signed off by the internal auditor. You will see it's got yeses, like we saw in the internal audit report, for everything that is applicable, apart from item C, which is risk management. And that feeds into the formal annual governance statement on the following page, which confirms to our external auditors, who this will be sent to after this meeting, that in internal audit's view, the controls were operating. So again, you've got yeses, apart from no, for number 5, risk management. And I think that is all I'll say on that one, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Dan. Does anyone have any questions on that agenda item?
Madam Mayor, sorry, just to say, I think that the version that's come up on Modern Gov has got nothing in the columns. So I don't know whether we have circulated the up-to-date version. If we haven't, we will do that after the meeting. But the version I've got here, Dan, seems to have empty columns, but signatures at the bottom.
Okay. So has everybody got columns or
It's on
anything?
the website. There is a Matt Film is looking on the public website.
Yeah.
We've got, so, but yes, on Modern Gov we've got.
You have all the Charter Trustees have it. Is that?
That's
yes,
fine. Okay,
that's
fine.
perfectly fine then.
Fine.
Thank you.
It's all blank.
Oh, you've got it all off the website. Perfect. But we all have it. Yes.
It's all blank on the report that's been distributed to Charter Trustees. All the columns are blank. Bit like this.
We will circulate the link to the website straight after the meeting. Then.
So until it was said that there was a no there, I didn't know there was a no because it's all blank.
Okay. So can we all agree to that, or do we need to hold fire on that one, Graham?
If we're okay, if just Charter Trustees are able
Happy?
to accept that, then we'll circulate the link straight after. Unless we can do that
Everyone
during the
happy
meeting.
with that one? Perfect, no dissent, so that's cool. Right, agenda item 8, Statement of Accounts 2020 to 21. I call on Dan Pavey, the responsible financial officer, to present the Statement of Accounts for 2020-2021.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is the section 2 of the AGAR is the accounting statements. If you're looking at the version that has got the numbers in it, it agrees exactly to what we had in the previous budget outturn report. It's showing expenditure of 77,000 and it's ending up with reserves of 85,577. So it's exactly in accordance as what we've seen. This year it's got the comparatives from the previous year. Of course we didn't have that last year being the first year of operation. I've signed the hard copy, which is with Karen Tompkins, as is required in the accounts and audit regulations, to certify from the responsible financial officer's point of view that this represents a true and fair view of the financial position, and if Charter Trustees are minded to approve it, at the end of the meeting we will ask the Mayor and the Clerk to sign it.
Thank you, Dan. Can I call...
Sorry, Madam Mayor, we have item 7 and then we have item 10, and there's nothing in our papers around item 8. I can't see anything. So I'm assuming it's on the website. Could you give us a minute to go on the website and have a look for it?
So, sorry, it's the annual governance and accountability return, which I think is badged as 7, the annual governance statement on the agenda paper. It's one PDF document and it's got the two different statements in it. So if you go to page 33 of your agenda papers, you will see something that says section 2 accounting statements. So it relates to agenda item 8,
okay,
but it's
it's
the
just
same
that's blank
document.
as well. All of those documents are completely blank. So would you mind giving us a minute to actually have a look on the website?
I definitely will,
vote for
because
something
we need to make sure there's no glitches next time like this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Brown, did you want to add to that?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Yeah, it was just to reiterate actually that both of those reports we've got is just literally the blank form. It doesn't even have the name of the authority in it, or any signatures or any figures or any comments at all. So I think it's probably difficult for members to have carried out their due diligence and actually vote for or against or abstain on that report, because the one that we've got on Modern Gov is literally the blank incomplete form without anything on it. So I don't know whether that can be deferred, because we need to show that we've carried out due diligence in terms of, you know, approving the annual governance and the accounts.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. I am going to ask Mr Jones and Mr Hopkins to please help me with an answer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Brown, Councillor Slade, I've just forwarded you a link to the document that contains on the website. It appears to be the Modern Gov app version, hasn't got that detail in it, but the one on the website does have the figures. If there's any other councillors who are using the app, then I can forward that link as well. So just give me 1 second, Councillor Rice.
Just for clarification.
I have it, Madam Mayor, because I'm looking at it from the website, and it's all populated.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I can only apologise if we didn't spot this before, but it appears that the app version of Modern Gov has just got blank columns, although it has got the signatures on, so it's taken it a very strange way, whereas the website, I think, has got all the detail on. So really open for Charter Trustees whether you're willing to, if we circulate the link now, whether you want to agree them, or just looking around to see whether actually we would need to have another process, which we can just have a quick think about what we might do.
Charter Trustees, I'm happy to listen to everyone on this one, because I didn't realise it wasn't there. I'm sure I saw it when we did the pre-meeting. Councillor Slade.
Madam Mayor, I know some people have obviously accessed it via the website and are able to see it. I certainly, only being able to see it now, I would be most happy abstaining on it, because I don't feel it would be appropriate to vote any other way. If the majority of people here have had the opportunity and feel that they're able to vote on it, then I suppose we can. But the alternative would be to adjourn for 10 minutes to give us a chance to read it. That's
Perfect
you know, your
idea,
hand.
Councillor Slade. I think an adjournment for 10 minutes, just why everyone can get up to speed with it, would be the best solution to the issue at the moment. Thank you all. everyone's happy with that one, because obviously we've realised there was a fair few glitches in the system. But if everybody's happy with that one, then we will proceed to the, if everyone's happy for agenda item 8 to be signed off as well. Oh, Councillor Brooks? Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. Right. Okay, so what am I doing now? Okay, Councillor Brooks, please.
Madam Mayor, I note on the external auditors section 3, the certificate, it seems to be incomplete even. And this is on the link that was sent in by Richard.
Dan's quite happy to answer that one for you, Councillor Brooks, hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, so what the process is in terms of the audit is that we ask the Charter Trustees to vote and approve, firstly, the annual governance statement. Secondly, after they've done that, the accounting statements, which is section 2. At that point, we would send the signed copies off to the external auditor by the deadline, which is the 30th of June, and then they will review the statements along with the supporting evidence we give them, and they will only fill in section 3, the auditor's report and certificate, once they have completed their audit. So it should be blank until they've assessed the statements.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Has anyone else any questions? Sorry, Councillor Brown. Could we have a response to Councillor Brown's question, please, Dan? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I can confirm that the number plate isn't in the value of the assets, the million pounds that's on the statements there. As to what value it is at in the balance sheet, I don't think we have that at our fingertips. But again, we can go away with Richard and get the full package of information relating to that number plate.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Brown?
Yeah, that'd be welcome for
Yeah.
a written response. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. Right, so we are now on. Everybody is happy with agenda item 8, aren't they? And perfect. Thank you. Agenda item 9, responsible financial officer. The Charter Trustees are advised that in accordance with the standing orders, the responsible financial officer from the 1st of June 2021, following the resignation of Dan, will be Nicola Webb in a temporary capacity. I would like to take the opportunity of thanking Mr. Povey for his support to the Charter Trustees and wish him well in the future. You've done an amazing job, Dan. Thank you. Thank you. I'm sure everyone else is in total agreement with me, because Dan has had to start doing the first year, and that was no mean feat, I would have imagined. So thank you, everyone, and we really, really are pleased that you helped us in that first year, and I hope you have a great future. Thank you. Councillor Iyengar.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just noted at the end of the paragraph there that Nicola Webb will be taking over in a temporary capacity.
Yes.
Can I ask maybe the relevant officer, is there an intention to have someone sort of permanent and dedicated to the role going forward? Because I do think even though the numbers are small, there's a sort of a know-how that we benefit from as Charter Trustees by having a regular person in this for continuance, for the ease of handling the matters. Is that the intention, please? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Iyengar, and I'd quite like the answer to that question as well, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, absolutely. The intention is to have an officer who is responsible for this in a permanent basis going forward. But that is the reason why Nicola is stepping in temporarily. Is the replacement for my post is recruited.
Thank you ever so much for that explanation. You happy, Councillor Iyengar? Okay, perfect. Agenda item 10, Remembrance Day events. Poole. I call on Richard Jones, Head of Democratic Services, to present the report, please. Richard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members, or Charter Trustees, I should say. This report is before you at your request of your January meeting, where you asked for a report to come back on remembrance services, and in particular the activities in relation to Broadstone, where it was discussed informally under the budget item. So the report itself outlines the current activities supported by the trustees in relation to remembrance services, and asks members to consider whether to support financially activities in relation to Broadstone. I'm not intending to go through the report in detail, but clearly in terms of your current activities, you are financially supporting the civic event in Poole Park, the remembrance or the 2-minute silence at the civic offices, and the laying of wreaths in 2 locations in Broadstone and Hamworthy, where we currently provide 2 or 3, and it has depended on the year in question, 2 or 3 wreaths in those particular areas. In relation to the supply of wreaths, though, we are conscious that there could be other activities taking place throughout the borough area or the Charter Trustee area, and therefore it would be right and proper to have representation at those if they are taking place. The suggestion in terms of trying to maintain your budget is that you perhaps consider reducing that to 1 per ward upon request, again purely in terms of the budget, but again that's for you to determine. That's referenced in one of the recommendations. I then set out in the report a little bit of history in terms of road closures for civic these events, and going over the decades, and I've been doing this many years, they have been in the past relatively informal. Volunteers have stood in the road to close the traffic whilst a procession takes place, and that's worked well in that time. Clearly over the last few decades, regulations have changed, challenges have occurred, traffic volumes have gone up, and awareness, and that has had to be formalised. With it, a formal road closure, the marshalling now of professionals to close the road, and liability insurance as three examples. Each of those carry expenditure and costs for the organisers, and that has clearly had an impact on community and charitable events wishing to do road closures of any kind, in raising and maintaining suitable funds for their charitable organisations. And that has equally, and then I move on to specifically talking about Broadstone, that again, that is exactly what has probably happened in the past in Broadstone. It's transitioned, and the British Legion has found that that's quite a significant dent in their funds for managing those particular activities. And I know over the last few years they've had to incur, or the organisers have had to incur expenditure. This brings together an option, and it's really for the trustees. I'm not making a recommendation, it's for trustees to determine whether to provide financial support to the remembrance services in Broadstone. I set out in the report that if you wish to do that, it's likely to be in the region of around £2,000 to cover those costs, which would need to go into the base budget for 22-23. But could be met in this year from your in-year reserves if you wish to allocate that sum of money. Just to be clear as well, one particular issue that has raised its head, and this may be raised by members generally anyway, there is a guidance from the National Royal British Legion suggesting that British Legion branches cannot organise remembrance events, and it should be up to the local authority as a civic event to organise. It's implying that they're not permitted to organise road closure orders. I have checked with the events team and the road traffic team, and anybody, any organisation, charitable group or community associate or group could organise and make an application for a road closure for any event. I could organise a street party and apply for that. What I've got to do, and I think this is probably the real issue, is that I've got to go through those hurdles of risk assessments, of liability insurance, of marshalling and paying for all those costs. So just to clarify, there isn't a bar on the Legions, British Legions, organising road closures, and indeed I think Christchurch organises that particular event. But it could be, for instance, if they don't have the capacity to do that, that a local community group could be formed to lead on some of that activity, working with the British Legion branch to do that. I think from a civic team, and it is a very small civic team, we don't have, just to be clear, we don't have the capacity to organise remembrance services in local areas. So this suggestion is that if you were minded to approve it, would be funding the work of others to formalise that particular road closure and for that event to take place. So I'll probably leave it there. The recommendations are set out in the report on page 37. They're in three parts. One is that we continue with the services in Poole Park and the 2-minute silence, that a single wreath is supplied upon request to ward councillors for events in their ward, and then the Charter Trustees to determine whether to allocate the sum of £2,000 in their base budget for 2022-23 onwards, and from the in-year unallocated reserves for 2021-22 for the Broadstone activities. I'll stop there, Madam Mayor, and answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr Jones. I have questions from Councillor White first and then Councillor Stribley, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to propose a small amendment to item 10B. This is supported by the 3 Hamworthy councillors. It's all about this. For 10 years or more, we have supported a remembrance service at St Michael's in Hamworthy, and we've always laid 2 wreaths in a major public ceremony at the War Memorial. I mean, one of those wreaths has been on behalf of the town or borough. The other wreath has been on behalf of the local councillors. I'd quite simply like to propose that we continue this tradition. So I would like to amend 10B, where it says a single wreath. I would like to replace that with the words up to 2 wreaths. I mean, the costs we're looking at, I guess, £20, £30 a year. I think that's a small price to pay to preserve this long-established tradition. And looking to the future, I mean, as it sits at the moment, I think there are only, I think Richard said, only 2 wards that are affected in the borough. Obviously, if this became pervasive, then that's something we might take a look at again. But as it stands, I'd appreciate support for changing the words from a single wreath to up to 2 wreaths. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Slade. Everybody's sorry, I'm happy to. No one's objecting, is that right? Oh, Councillor Yenga, and that's go on. Sorry. Okay, that's perfectly fine. Carry on, Councillor Stribley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've no problem with the provision of 1 or even 2 wreaths by the council to any of the wards or parishes within the old borough of Poole which might request them. Now, these things do change over the years. I know Hamworthy's always had, or for many years, has had its formal service, and so has Broadstone. Parkstone does at St Peter's Church, but they have never asked for anything from the borough. And I think actually asking the borough to finance road closures or anything like that is inappropriate. I would certainly support a wreath or maybe 2 wreaths if necessary being provided to any ward that is requesting it. But if the councillors from each ward chose to go to their local church service on Remembrance Day, then there wouldn't be the civic service in the park that we have, which is so appreciated. Not only do we get all the servicemen, ex-servicemen as well, we literally get thousands of people in the park on that day. It is quite remarkable how many people turn up for it. And I would have thought the Charter Trustees should continue to support that. I think we could well provide 1 or 2, but quite frankly, I think if councillors want to provide a wreath, they should fund it themselves, to be honest. A wreath elsewhere, but I certainly wouldn't think we should be diving into the public pot to give to 1 ward, because it has to open up then Hamworthy, Newtown, Heatherlands, Parkston, Penhill, Canford Cliffs, so they all could have a call on it. And of course there are many churches and, you know, they cross communities doing different things around. So whilst it doesn't sound very much, I think it could put us in a difficulty for the future. So I have no problem with the wreaths, but I would have a problem with if we were expanding on organising road closures. We don't have the capacity for that now. Your very small team, I think, is asking too much. The team should be doing what the Mayor Civic Party needs and has to stick to that, I'm afraid.
Thank you, Councillor Stribley. Councillor Iyengar, would you come? No? Okay. Councillor Slade, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think we need to sort of discuss what actually is being offered here. This isn't ward councillors going to a church service and asking for road closure. There is a long established, for decades and decades, of a full remembrance parade operated by the Royal British Legion in Broadstone, which is the only other full branch of the British Legion within Poole, which has servicemen, which has usually the chief fire officer, a senior police officer, senior council officers. It is a full civic parade, which also draws many hundreds of local residents, is then followed by a church service, which does not require road closure. For years and years, it has not been charged the costs for road closure. My understanding is nobody's asking for the civic party to either attend, nor for the civic party to get involved in the civic staff to have to do anything. It is simply so that the Broadstone British Legion, who are prevented as a branch from using the money, the Broadstone branch, the Royal British Legion branch, are prevented from using the funds that are raised through the Poppy Appeal or any other fundraising for matters which do not benefit the welfare of former servicemen and those that they care for. So historically, the council never charged for this. It is lots of volunteers that are operated. One of the big costs that this £2,000 goes to is the fact that the council has historically paid members of staff to work overtime. And I find that shocking when there are so many residents of Broadstone who are employees of the council, and so many other volunteers who would be willing to man those road closures, also staff those road closures, that we have a volunteering strategy coming up at BCP Council, and I'd like to think that there's enough capacity from 4,500 staff to say people can man that closure. So this isn't about the civic party. This is about continuing a tradition of supporting the second civic event, which we are not asking for anyone to go to. And this isn't about us going to our local church. This is about us supporting a well-established, organised event, which we have done in the past and which senior officers have attended on behalf of the council.
Thank you, Councillor Slade. Councillor Haynes, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've listened very carefully to what Councillor Slade has said, and my feeling on the matter in terms of recommendation C, I would agree with what Councillor Stribley has actually said, in that the Charter Trustee, we shouldn't be using the funds to actually fund effectively road closures and what is apparently a second civic event. My understanding is we're the Charter Trustees, and for Remembrance Day, it has always historically been the official event, even when it was in the days of the Borough of Poole, and now we're BCP and we got the Charter Trustee of Poole. Our official civic event is the one that is held at Poole Park, which you yourself, Madam Mayor, will be attending as our Mayor and our top citizen, because you're the Mayor for this coming year when we run the Remembrance Service. So I have to say that I'm particularly nervous in allowing this or accepting recommendation C, because what's to say that another ward within the Charter Trustee boundary might then say, we want to do a ceremony which involves having to close a road. Where do we go then? We have to be fair. We were talking about a single and possibly now up to 2 wreaths. I think the funds within the Charter Trustees could take that, but a year-on-year 2,000, perhaps going up annually, I really am uncomfortable with that. While I understand that this has traditionally been an event in Broadstone, perhaps we should take this away and look at it again, in that we can do a step change. We will provide them with some funding over the course of maybe 2 years, after which, if they want to continue with the event, they will have to find their own source of funding. I am very uncomfortable with using Charter Trustee money to pay for an event which is not an official civic event. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. Just for clarification, Councillor Slade, the way I heard it was not necessarily now money, more using volunteers, because we're still back at the money, yeah?
No, my point is that the reason that so much, the reason it costs so much isn't the road closure. If the accumulative costs that are charged by the council includes staff time, not the civic staff time, but staff time for people to man the road closures. Now, what the paper actually says, that it would pay on invoiced costs, actual real live costs. So if our staff are being encouraged to volunteer in their communities, which I understand the volunteering strategy would do anyway, that isn't necessarily something that's going to be needed. The actual physical cost that is not avoidable, and which was kindly supported by the council in its first year in 2019, is the charges around the road closures. Historically, Poole Council never charged for those road closures. That is a new cost which was introduced in the final year of Poole Council, which we fought against, one, on the basis that it was a new council coming, and ever since the new council has been formed, this has been a matter of debate. The idea that the people of Broadstone should have to abandon their long-held event and attend something in Poole is ridiculous, really. And the cost of this meeting, £6,000. It's more than that. It's at least £6,000. It's crazy. And I think the people of Broadstone have as much right to funds from the Charter Trustees as anywhere else. And there will be other things that come forward that the trustees are asked to fund. And just because it affects one ward and not other wards doesn't mean I would vote against it.
Thank you, Councillor Slade. Now, I've seen a lot of hands going up, so you're going to have to bear with me. Councillor Andrews, I do believe, was the next hand.
Okay.
No, I was wrong.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, the Broadstone event, I haven't been to it, but I've heard about it. I know that it is well supported. I have in the past been a councillor in Christchurch, and they actually had 3 remembrance services, effectively. One at 9 o'clock at Purewell, and then the big one at the Priory. And then in the afternoon over in Highcliffe, and they were all considered to be civic events, and all councillors were expected or invited to attend. Obviously in those days, yes, road closures just happened. Obviously now in this environment that we're in, health and safety and everything like that, it all has to be done properly. But as Councillor Slade has just mentioned, this meeting this evening is costing the Charter Trustees 3 times as much as the money that we are thinking of not investing in something which is very worthy, remembering all those people that did all the deeds in the First and Second World War, etc., etc. So I think I would like to propose the recommendation as set out, but incorporating Councillor White's amendment of up to 2 wreaths. And I hope we can have that seconded and move on, because, you know, in the general scheme of things, noting that earlier on we've got 90-odd thousand pounds in reserve for something. Well, this is something that we should be investing money in or spending money in, and I would so propose. Thank you.
Do you have a seconder on that? 2 seconds. Councillor Brooks, Councillor Moore either. Thank you. Right, we need to just debate that now then, do we? Yes, please.
If I could just clarify, so recommendation C was actually asking the Charter Trustees to determine whether or not to support. So I think for clarity, and Councillor Andrews, I think clearly in terms of Councillor White's proposal, that was clear in terms of adding up to 2 wreaths to recommendation B. But in terms of C, I think the wording that is on the agenda, I think you need to delete the words determine whether to, or determine whether, and so it will read, the Charter Trustees allocate the sum of £2,000 in the 2022-23 base budget, etc.
Thank you for your advice. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Thank you. Well, without suggestion, yes, please. Thank you.
The Honorary Clerk's going to just explain this in a moment.
So if that's a formal move, if we have seconders, then it is then a case of debating the amendment, which will then have a debate, and then taking a vote on that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Farrant. Mr. Jones?
Madam Mayor, if I can just, that it's not an amendment because that it's not been moved before. Councillor White was making a request to add the words up to. I don't think that was seconded. I know Councillor Slade.
Yeah, we said.
But that was only in relation to recommendation B. Recommendation C wasn't moved at that point. Councillor White, I don't believe you moved recommendation C. So Councillor Andrews has now incorporated all of that into one. So I think for clarity, I think the motion you have on the table is ABC, with B being altered to read up to 2 and the deletion of the words determine whether to in recommendation C. I don't believe you have an amendment on the table.
Oh, okay, so surely we need to do this one by one, then A, B and C separately.
I think for the purpose of debate, I think you are right, Madam Mayor. I would probably deal with them A, B, C, and then you can debate each one.
Makes sense.
And so on.
It's getting too confusing. It's just getting too confusing. I have got a list of names, but firstly, can we go to agenda item 10, but A of agenda item 10, which was Councillor White's, wasn't yours. Yours is B, so which is A, then?
Sorry, just to clarify, Councillor Andrews moved A, B and C actually, so I think Councillor Andrews has moved recommendation A, that the Charter Trustees continue to organise and fund the Remembrance Services and Armistice Day events at the Mayoral Office and Poole Park. That was seconded by Councillor Brooke.
Okay, so what do we need to do now then?
So I think if you wish to put that one to the vote, I think that one's probably going to be supported by all Charter Trustees, but I think that formally needs to be put to the vote.
Okay, we'll put it to the vote, but yeah, go on, we'll put it to the vote, but I've got other people that want to speak and I don't know when they wanted to, what they were speaking about, so it's kind of gone a bit skewy.
I suppose the question, Madam Mayor, is did anybody wish to speak about item A? I think everybody's shaking their heads, in which case then...
In which case, is everyone happy with item A? Okay, thank you. So everybody's in agreement for item A. Draw a line through it, please. Right, going on to the next item. Okay, I do still have the names for the councillors, which I kind of jumped Councillor Andrews in. It was supposed to be Councillor Rice, so please.
Yeah, I'm happy to just go to the vote, continue through.
Okay, thank you. I have Councillor Brooks. Did you want to speak? No, okay. Pardon? Okay, let's go to a vote on B and then C is going to be the hard one. Thank you. Is everyone happy for to agree with item B? As amended, yes. Thank you, Councillor Brown. Right, that's carried. And now we're on item C. Is that correct? Perfect. Now, does anyone want to speak on item C? Because I have a list of councillors, but that could have changed by now. So, Councillor Brown?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, it was around item C and some of the comments earlier. I support it. I don't have an issue with the additional budget, and I think comments been made that, you know, we're over £60,000 in excess of the recommended reserves. You know, we've got over £85,000 reserves. I think a couple of £1,000s isn't to be concerned about. I think it's a red herring to suggest that it may open the door to other events. But I think that is covered in the report, actually. In the conclusion, paragraph 13, it says the Charter Trustees are asked to review the remembrance activities financially supported and consider whether to allocate an annual budget to support the Broadstone British Legion. Charter Trustees may be concerned that this could set a precedent for other areas, and there's some concerns about that. Such a policy could be limited to events organised by established branches of the British Legion, of which there are only 2, Poole and Broadstone. I'm loath to recommend an amendment to paragraph C there, but it would be simple to add a few words to say to allocate that sum from the and use the 2021-22 unallocated reserve to provide some financial support towards events organised by established branches of the British Legion, for example, Broadstone. And I think that would cover the concerns that these kinds of events may pop up and may increase the budget. If we just had the words added to the end of that, provide financial support towards events organised by established branches of the British Legion, for example, Broadstone. I think that should cover everybody's concerns about that. Well, I'll propose that.
We then have to debate that amendment, Madam Mayor, and if that stands, then it stands. If it falls, then we then go on to the more general debate.
So we go straight into debate. So can
On the amendment.
On the amendment. Yeah. Who wants to talk on the amendment, please? Councillor Stribley. Okay.
Chairman, my concern is not about the relatively small amount of money, and I don't have a problem basically with the road closure, but the Charter of Trustees is set up specifically, I believe, for the enhancement and continued running of the civic office. What happens in Broadstone isn't that, and I don't think we have the right, however much we might feel about it, to support that or any other charitable event, and there is nothing, no organisation in better standing than the Royal British Legion, but I think we are not technically able to do it, and I think we would need legal advice. Poole Council certainly used to have a small grants fund, which would have been the appropriate place. Whether BCP Council still now has a small grants fund, but I personally, I don't have a problem with the detail and the small amount. I do have a problem with the fact that I don't think it's legal for us to do it.
Can I have clarification, please, from one of the officers?
Sorry, Madam, the Charter Trustees, for the purpose of this, are the equivalent of a town and parish council, and the support given to remembrance services falls on the lowest level of local authority, and in this case that would be the Charter Trustees. Where there is no such Charter Trustees or town or parish council, then it would fall on the district, in a two-tier area, or the unitary authority where neither of those exist. So it is within the remit of the Charter Trustees to allocate this funding.
You're happy with that? No, as happy as you can be, and thank you. Councillor Rice, sorry.
Yes, I was pleased to hear about the event at Broadstone. I didn't know about it before. And I just think especially given COVID and people are appreciating community so much more, that I think it seems perfectly reasonable, and it is a long-standing tradition. So, yeah, I was also wondering whether we could move to the vote on it. Quite a lot of people have spoken. So.
I've got a few more people to speak at the moment, Councillor Rice, so I'm not happy to go forward to the vote yet until I've given everyone a chance to speak. But I'm sure we will get there as soon as possible. Councillor Earl.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Brown jumped in at the amendment I was actually going to propose as well. But I think also this does raise a question long term about how we allocate funds for Remembrance Day events. We are a big town, and we are a town of diverse communities. You know, whether you're from Broadstone, Creekmore, Parkstone, they're all different places. And if anyone wanted to set up a Legion and hold their own Remembrance Day events, I think there's scope now for the creation of branches so that we can hold those in our own communities. And because Broadstone has that at the moment, and it is officially recognised as a Legion, it seems absolutely unfair to take that away. So I think this could actually be a bit of a turning point for the Charter Trustees and how we approach Remembrance Day events in our own communities, and also for the wider town as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Earl. I was just going to say, though, that Poole's branch of the Royal British Legion do attend the Poole Park ceremony, and then after the year before, I was invited back to the Legion in Poole, North Road, and we laid wreaths again there. So, to be honest, in my opinion, we need to be looking at the whole of Poole, not just Hamworthy, Broadstone, or wherever. I think all councillors have the right to request a wreath to be laid somewhere, because every ward lost people through the wars going through the years, some more than most, but it has always will and always has had a massive impact on everyone left behind. So, so for me, we can't just say A, B, or C. We need to be looking at a bigger picture to find solutions, and I'd quite like to think that we could all find solutions to the problem, rather than, you know, going forward. Councillor Haynes did say about, you know, she's a little bit worried going forward year on year, and we do have to find solutions to that, and I do agree with her that in 10 years' time we could be putting 20 grand in it, and for one place, which would be not fair to everyone else if we did it on that thought. So I'd quite like us to see if we can all come up with solutions that is actually beneficial for everyone without having to spend money on anything, because we are supposed to be, you know, working for the residents of Poole, inclusive of everyone. And I'm going to bring Councillor Butler in a minute, please. Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to say that having lived in Creekmore, which is the north part of Poole, it's not just people in Broadstone who go to the Broadstone Memorial. North Poole is actually in a different constituency anyway, so to have two places is quite useful in Poole as a town, to have the civic area and Broadstone. Broadstone Royal British Legion has got an office in Broadstone where you can buy wreaths and all sorts of things from them. They've also got a cafe with facilities, so they're not just there for remembrance, they're there always. And I know personally that a lot of people do support them throughout the year, and I feel that as BCP has actually signed the Armed Forces Covenant, this sort of thing is what we should really be supporting across the whole of the town. So I really would be in support of giving them some money to allow a parade there, as I think it's a very significant parade, as well as the main one in Poole Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. I was conscious there were other hands up, but I'm not seeing them now. Is there any? Councillor Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think the motion that's before us from Councillor Brown covers the issue that you were raising in terms of it looks at effectively the whole of Poole. I just want to make one or two points in terms of the position of the parade and the residents of Broadstone as well. It has been recognised by BCP Council effectively as a civic event insofar as sending senior officers to attend that, as I believe they have done at Hamworthy as well, and other areas, other places where the services take place. It is a big parade, and the last parade I attended there was actually significantly larger in terms of the parade itself than the civic parade in Poole Park in terms of people taking part in that parade. And it has a very, very significant role for the younger generations as well, of the Boys Brigade, the Scouts, the Brownies, and so on, all who attend and parade as well. And that is a significant part of the process. The other element is a financial one, insofar as Broadstone residents do actually contribute to the precept and therefore have contributed significantly to the funding and funds that we as a Charter Trustees already have. And yes, I appreciate that every part of Poole has contributed to the funds, but surely with the amount of money we've got in reserves at the moment and the amount that is collected over the year with the precept, some little portion of that can go back to the residents, effectively the residents of Poole, recognising the support that that they give to the Legion and the Legion's parade. I think there's one point that has been missed. Because of the significance of that parade and that event, there is a serious risk of reputational damage, and that was mentioned in the report, not only to BCP Council, but also to the Charter Trustees if we don't actually respond in a positive way to this sort of request. So I'm more than happy to support Councillor Brown's proposal, and I would hope that everyone else will support it as well. Fine, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Councillor Haynes, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Interesting debate here, but I have to say that I will be unable to support this, and the reason I'm saying this is because there was mention about we have a significant amount of money in reserves. Yes, that is correct. However, what we have to realise as well is we've had a rather unusual year last year, which meant that the reason we have such a significant increase in our reserves is because we couldn't offer, as a civic party, any hospitality. Now, I'm really hoping, I know we're nearly into July now, that things will actually start to improve, and you, Madam Mayor, will have an absolutely wonderful year. Absolutely. And so, therefore, we will be using our hospitality budget. So, again, for me, it comes down to the point of sustainability. We can offer help, but I think it has to be offered in a way that eventually the event will actually become self-sustaining. No one is saying that we are against anyone laying a wreath. Now, I've not attended the one in Hamworthy because I normally go to the one in Poole Park, but my understanding is that it doesn't involve any road closures or any marshalling.
No, it doesn't.
You go and you lay a wreath. And everyone is saying, yeah, absolutely, we would support that. Hence, we all supported recommendation B as amended. But I think with this, I just feel uncomfortable because it's just saying to fund it, and the implication is that you are funding it in perpetuity. The Charter Trustee is not in a position to make that commitment. So for that reason, I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to support this. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. Councillor Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's a point for clarification. It was mentioned that...
I've just been told that I'm not sure if we can have
Can I ask for a clarification?
Please, yes, is that fine?
So it's
Yeah.
So has Councillor Woods already spoken on this?
Yeah, previous to Councillor Haynes talking. So,
Is it your discretion?
thank you. It was a. What was the wording you used, Mike? You were going to.
I would like something clarified in what has just been said.
You'd
by
like
Councillor
clarification on what Councillor Haynes said. Is that
Yes,
correct?
But it may require officers' response rather than Councillor Haynes' response.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much for your help. Any
Is that
officer?
permissible?
That's perfectly acceptable. Is any officer going to?
So
help me?
what I'm asking, Madam Mayor, it was mentioned that there was no road closure for the Poole Civic Remembrance
Yes.
ceremony, but actually the road through Poole Park is closed, and it is a public highway and is used as a public highway, therefore it must have had a road closure, but that will be paid for, or would have been paid presumably by the council itself, to the council.
Just
Sorry,
That's a
Madam Mayor.
clarification. Is that the case or not? If it's
Hold
not,
on,
that's
Councillor
fine.
Brooks. I'm trying to find an answer, but we're not.
Just for clarification, I was referring to no road closure in Hamworthy, not Poole Park.
Yes,
Thank you.
that is correct. It wasn't Poole. It was. Thank you, Councillor Haynes. And as for the other part of Poole Park, the road closure in Poole Park, I don't think many people could get through all the Marines that marched down there, to be fair. So it's closed by people. Is there anything else we need to debate? We need to go to the vote. Yes, is everyone happy going to the vote, or is there? Sorry, Councillor Younger.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just on this one, if I can just reflect on 2 or 3 points, but I do promise to be quick. Is that I think the merits of the case are there on this one. I think the one that, okay, it's only a small money in a big budget, I think has been addressed, because I think that shouldn't be a leading point in this, because quite rightly my colleague has said, well, the calls on the budget will increase significantly and then we won't quite be in this situation. It does strike me from the conversations that's what's vexing us, all of us, if I may, is the thing about sort of the precedent over time and the precedent to other events around Poole, and the fact that we are either setting an expectation in people's minds or monetarily we're setting something in motion that we can't extricate ourselves from. And that's probably the only bit of this that's probably vexing me a little bit, because I'm actually happy to go along with this, but I think I'm not going to propose an amendment or anything like that, but what must be, I think, understood somehow in C, and even with the words base budget, is that we've got to retain as Charter Trustees complete flexibility in future years over this, and even if it's in base budget, have the right, without fear, without embarrassment, without any awkwardness, if it's merited, to reduce the budget, cut the funding in future years, but obviously taking a balanced view across all events and the worthiness of all sorts of things. And that's got to be the understanding on this if we take this forward. And in that spirit, I could accept this, because we don't know what will coming forward, and there are many others out there. This is, I think, has merit, absolutely has merit, but there are many others who may come in, and obviously we don't want to be tied. So, sorry, rather a long explanation of a straightforward point.
No, Councillor Younger, that was a really good point. Thank you so much for that. Councillor Slade.
I haven't spoken on the amendments. I
You
think I'm
certainly
safe.
haven't, Councillor Slade, so please feel free to
So
speak
I
now.
think that was a really good point that Councillor Iyengar made,
Yes.
in that what this is asking for is that it goes into the base budget. Every line of the base budget we have the right to change every year, whether we spend on flowers or cars or anything else. So I don't think we're baking it in forever. I think all budgets are reviewable every year. We have to sign it off every February. So, I think that was I'm really pleased that Councillor Iyengar put that forward, because I think it puts it into context. No one expects things to not change forever, but actually I don't see why we should stop it at this point, and I'm really grateful that he's willing to support on that basis.
Thank you, Councillor Slade. Councillor Brown, to sum up then, please, if no one else has anything to add. No? Cool. Thank you, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I think just the comments that my colleagues have made, that support of it. I think the additional words there, and I think even Councillor Iyengar's concerns that there may be others sort of come along. I think the fact that if we put in there the wording that's included in the report in the conclusion, that it's events organised by recognised branches of the British Legion, assuages that concern. So I move that we go to the vote on this.
Thank you, Councillor Wren. I'm going to hand over to Mr Jones just to give us the overview of that, please, the wording. Thank you.
So, Madam Mayor, you're going to move to the vote on the amendment only. So this is the additional words at the end of the recommendation C. And I think Councillor Brown just slightly changed one word then, but the words I got down from the original one was organised. So this is to support activities in Broadstone, and then this is adding the words organised by an established branch of the Royal British Legion, for example, Broadstone RBL. So that's what you're voting on at this stage.
Okay, so Councillor Burton, please. O'Neill, sorry. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Councillor O'Neill.
Well, I
sorry.
usually get taken as Tony Trent, so I'm quite delighted, really. Yeah, I'm a bit worried about opening Pandora's box if we don't watch it. We have a responsibility as trustees to manage the precept, and I think we have to take in the broad consideration. I'd like to know two things. How many Legion branches could we have to support? And are we going to put an absolute cap on the money that's available to support them? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. I've just been told that we weren't allowed to do that bit. So, we go straight to the vote, okay? Is everyone happy with that? Okay.
It's quite a simple question to answer, isn't it? Because I think it's in the paper that there are two.
We have a responsibility to ask that question, I think.
It's in the paper, there are two.
Mr Jones, yes, please.
Again, slightly deviating from the procedure, but in answer to the question, there are currently 2 Royal British Legions within the Charter Trustee area, that is Poole and Broadstone. Clearly, your recommendation today, if you approve this, is to allocate £2,000 for the Broadstone event. If we had a further request for another Royal British Legion, either Poole or a brand new one that may be established, that would be brought back to you. We would not automatically allocate any money to that. It's your budget. You would need to approve that for expenditure.
Thank you for that clarity.
Thank you, Mr Jones. And can I just clarify, this is a one-off, or is this going to be year on year? Because that was one of the issues that was said about in the debate.
Again, Madam Mayor, through you, this is putting £2,000 into, if you approve the recommendation, putting £2,000 into the base budget. But as was suggested, you review your budget annually, and at any point you could withdraw that £2,000 or introduce a policy of phasing that out over a number of years. That would be in your gift as Charter Trustees.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr Jones. Right, the vote, yes? Everyone's happy to go to the vote now? Perfect, thank you. Those for? Is that it? Okay. We'll do it. Any abstentions? 2. Any councillors against? 1. Thank you very much. So that's carried. Thank you. Substantive motion now.
So, Madam Mayor, if I can just explain. So your substantive motion would then read, so recommendation C, and this was proposed by Councillor Slade, seconded by Councillor Brooke, I think was the correct one, as amended, would be the Charter Trustees allocate the sum of £2,000 in the 2022-23 base budget and from the 2021-22 in-year unallocated reserves to provide financial support towards the remembrance activities in Broadstone organised by an established branch of the Royal British Legion, for example, Broadstone RBL. So that's the motion that's the substantive motion that you're now voting on.
There were two in Broadstones in there.
I can probably take one of the Broadstones out, indeed.
Sorry. Okay, so we're happy to go to the vote on this one. This is the substantive as Mr Jones read out. Anyone, those in favour? That's kind of an doojemy, yeah? We're 13. It's got to be because it's 12 and that's... those against? No one's against. Abstentions? 2 abstentions. Thank you very much. That is carried. Thank you. Okay, sorry. Okay, agenda item 11. Yeah, I was just going to say, that's, yeah, flag flying arrangements for the Charter Trustees for Poole. I call on Karen Tompkins, Deputy Head of Democratic Services, to introduce this item. Please, Karen. Thank you.
Many thanks, Madam Mayor. This is just an opportunity, excuse the pun, to flag the issue with the Charter Trustees and to give you the opportunity, one, to consider whether as Charter Trustees you wish to adopt a flag of your own. And as I've set out on the agenda, the coat of arms for the former Borough of Poole is actually in the ownership of the Charter Trustees. And 2, to give consideration to your own flag flying arrangements as a separate organisation. And obviously that can include identifying specific events that you wish to raise a flag for. There are examples that are set out on the agenda, or indeed there may be other events that as Charter Trustees that you would want to support. There are some notes that are set out on the agenda at 1, 2 and 3. And also a particular issue to raise is the provision of flagpole, or maybe a temporary flagpole that the Charter Trustees could actually use for that purpose. So it's an opportunity to highlight the issue. Maybe you as Charter Trustees would like us as officers to go away and do some further, more detailed work on it, but it's an opportunity to open that discussion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Karen. Councillor Andrews.
It's a question really of clarification. In paragraph 2, we're told that in the event of Charter Trustee or a civic dignitary passing away, then the flag will be flown at half-mast. What's the situation of former councillors of the Borough of Poole? Obviously, they were never Charter Trustees. Would that apply also to them? And if it would, obviously the people can discuss it. You know, obviously that recommendation or guidance that we've got there, I think should be amended, because obviously there are many former members of the Borough of Poole who are still with us at the moment, but you know, not many Charter Trustees in comparison. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Did anyone want to answer that, or Karen, please? Thank you.
In relation, thank you, Councillor Andrews, for your question. The reference to former councillors, that actually is already recognised within the flag flying protocol, which I understand was agreed at the Cabinet meeting earlier today. It does give an opportunity not only for the BCP Council to recognise former councillors, but I think if the Charter Trustees wish to take a view on establishing their own arrangements, it gives you the opportunity, if you wish to recognise Charter Trustees in the same way. So we're trying to provide some consistency, but just to clarify that the protocol agreed by Cabinet today does already reflect that for former councillors. And I think, if I'm correct, the reference made at council yesterday to a former Borough of Poole councillor, John Collier, we did make arrangements for the flag, the BCP council flag, to be flown at half-mast.
Thank you, Karen. Councillor Haynes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was actually going to mention most of what Ms Tompkins has actually said, in that we had approved the BCP flag flying policy at Cabinet this morning. And I just wanted a bit of further clarification, because obviously we are a Charter Trustee meeting here. So therefore, what I think would be good is if there is also a synergy between what we do, because obviously we will have our own flag to be determined, assuming it might be the former emblem that we use for Poole, just to make sure that when we agree the whatever flag flying we are going to be doing, that it would not cause any conflict between ourselves and BCP Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. Perfectly good question. Are we having an answer, or are we just taking that as for the minutes? Sorry, Karen.
Madam Mayor, yeah, thank you. Obviously, that is our main aim, that the protocol for the council, the BCP council, and anything that is put in place for by the Charter Trustees is complementary and works together.
Thank you so much, Karen, for your answer. Councillor Slade.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got a bit of a conflict here between the apparent coat of arms flag and the Poole flag, which I know the people of Poole feel very strongly we should be flying the Poole flag, but it has no official status, and I would be pretty uncomfortable if, as the Charter Trustees, we then sort of invented our own flag, which was then in conflict with the people of the historic people of Poole. I've dealt with them quite a lot, and I think we might end up with a battle on the key. So I think there needs to be a bit of a discussion about why we use this flag. And the other one I just wanted to flag, sorry for the pun, in the chart is I would suggest that flying whatever flag we decide to fly should be flown on Charter Day, as well as on those days, because after all that is the Charter of Poole. But I'm quite happy if you feel that it's appropriate that we have a working group that goes and looks at that, because there may be a conflict.
Thank you very much, Councillor Slade. All good points. Councillor Stribley, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it's necessary for us to determine what we are referring to by the Poole flag, and to agree on, as Charter Trustees, which we would like to adopt for the Charter of Trustees flag. The old Poole flag, and it was the emblem of the town as well, it's on the civic buildings, until 1996, was the coat of arms with a mermaid on top, etc. And that was the Poole flag from 1148, I think, till 1996. We then got a slightly different coat of, well, not a coat of arms, but a flag was flown on occasions with a bit of blue and different slogans on it as it went, once we became a unitary authority. So personally, I would like to see the old coat of arms and mermaid readopted as the Charter flag, because I think that is the historic one. But there might be occasions when people want to fly the other one in between. So it really depends which one we're talking about as to whether there's any debate about it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Stribley. Can I just have clarification, because it could get complicated? Thank you, Karen.
I think that the issues that are being raised by Charter Trustees clearly identify the need, and I think Councillor Slade's suggestion of maybe a small working group of Charter Trustees to look at all the options and identify all the potential events that you would like to support will certainly provide some clarity, and then we could potentially report back to a future meeting of the Charter Trustees with a paper, a protocol set out for consideration and adoption, and if you are happy, that seems a reasonable approach.
Karen, thank you so much, and that seems like a perfectly good idea to have. Councillor Butler, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to say that as we're trying to promote Poole and all its history and heritage, we need to have consistency over the symbols that are used. And on Poole Quay Bridge, it actually includes the dolphin symbol, which is on one of the flags, but also that is incorporated within the ancient emblem, which has the mermaid as well, but the dolphin is part of that. So as long as it was in keeping with that, I think that's really important, because you've got to continue the history and the image for people so that they know what it is they're looking at. And also I think that maybe a flagpole is vital, I think. And I think we could also maybe welcome VIPs and have special days where we can fly the flag as well, which would be really lovely for local people and for visitors. Thank you.
Councillor Butler, thank you so much, and I think we're all totally in agreement with that. The working party seems to be the best route to go down. I don't want the working party to be taking a year. I need it to be concise, get the information, and let's get dealing with it. Otherwise, 20 years down the line, we'll still be sitting here, not necessarily us. So if the officers can take that on board and get the working party. Councillor Stribley, sorry. Karen's just going to come in.
Sorry,
Councillor Stribley, a second.
Madam Mayor, if the Charter Trustees are agreeable with the working party, I don't know whether anybody wants to put their name in frame at this point, if they're willing to work on the working party, and we can get it up and running fairly quickly.
Thank you, Karen. Anyone ready to go for that? Putting their names forward? Councillor Stribley, yes?
Yes, Chairman, I was going to say the Mayor used to always be able to call a working party. It was called a Civic Advisory Committee. Perfect. And it was the current Mayor and any old mayors that happened to be still about.
Oh, that's perfect then. We're all going to be doing it.
But
Absolutely
if you
wonderful.
wanted to include some people who haven't yet been Mayor, that would be fine as well.
I think we should have a mixed medley, and I think with your experience, Anne, we will be halfway there, my darling, so that would be good. Okay. I was thinking I've completely lost track now. We are happy to start the working party. Anyone wanting to put their names forward, please feel free, and it will be going out in the minutes for other councillors, other Charter Trustees to put their name in, because obviously we don't need a massive group, but we do need a group working alongside the other working group. But to be concise and get us a report back fast. So we're all happy about that? We're all in favour of that? Okay, so taking it to a working group and getting it moving forward. Thank you. And the flagpole, were we happy with a temporary flagpole, or would we prefer something more? Karen?
Madam Mayor, all of those issues we can put in the pot for consideration. If there is temporary, I think that's possibly an easier approach from a planning perspective, but if there is something on a permanent basis, we would then need to be contacting our planning officers for advice. So we can, as a working group, potentially address all of those issues and report back.
Karen, thank you so much. Okay, so that one's dealt with. Agenda item 11 is dealt with now, yes? Thank you. Agenda item 12, the Twinning Association, which is quite exciting, to be fair. The Charter Trustees are asked to consider the allocation of funding under the Twinning budget head in 2021-22 to the Twinning Association, taking account of 5.8 of the financial regulations. I understand that Councillor Iyengar may have an update on the potential use of the funds. Councillor Iyengar, over to you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, trustees. I'm aware that you probably don't have documentation. Forgive me, I probably would have done more before the meeting. Forgive me, to have paperwork in front of you. But I'll give you a verbal update on the recent history, if I may, and then going forward, well, most importantly, what the request is for. The request is for £1,500 in base budget, but obviously, per the last discussion we had, obviously subject annually to the scrutiny of the trustees as to what's appropriate. I'll give you a quick recent history, although it will be quick because there's not much recent history to talk about. I'm currently the chairman of the Poole Cherbourg Twinning Association, have been since December 19, and it started with a lovely trip over to Cherbourg, I must say financed entirely by myself, nothing drawn down from the association's coffers. That was in February 2020, and literally a week and a half before the Barfleur service was, well, suspended at that time, and as it turned out, suspended for quite a long period up to this point. The reception I received from Cherbourg was nothing short of magnificent from the people, and for somebody like me who obviously doesn't look quite like he comes from Poole, and for a newcomer, and they couldn't have been warmer and more welcoming. And of course the food is what it is when you go over there, and there was a reception, and I tried on my best French with all of them for a whole array of people who came to shake my hand and converse. Fire services, rowing club, painters, amateur dramatics, representative of the cheesemakers, absolutely, of course, although the boulanger was nowhere to be seen, ornithologists, and obviously a link to Birds of Poole Harbour that we've got here, and also people from the fisheries side, and of course Councillor Pete Miles, who's the Vice Chair, couldn't be here this evening, but obviously a strong particular expertise he has there as well. And I probably missed one or two, but a whole range of people there. And what was so nice, magnanimous of them, is of course February 2020 was literally in about 6 weeks after a pretty momentous decision on Brexit as well, and that did not sour anything about the warmth of the welcome I received and their willingness to keep talking and keep engaging with us, and good for them. It was absolutely overwhelming. Now, going forward, I can confidently say that nothing has diminished in terms of the warmth of that relationship, and even the absence of contact over the last 18 months hasn't done anything to harm that. We've stayed in touch with phone calls and a couple of Zoom calls during the period, and I must say also, while there've been 1 or 2 personnel changes and actually elections, more than we've had this side, elections over on the Cherbourg side, both at the town and at the regional level. I think some of you may have been involved in the history of Poole-Cherbourg relations. What we had before was a hell of a lot of sport, rugby, hockey, rowing, and the petanque, of course, would be in there. The cultural arts side, small-scale events, and celebration of what's common and what's distinct about our cultures. Commemorations, of course, it's been touched on in this evening's meeting, commemorations of 75 years ago. The farmers' market, I remember that very, very keenly on Poole Quay, but they were there and in some form a feeling about can that return. Poole Hospital, the NHS, there was the mind boggles, I have to say, but the doctors, nurses and all sorts of administrative staff doing things with their counterparts over there. And the one which does seem a bygone era now is pen friends, school visits, and individuals being hosted by French families and vice versa here. And I have to say, my wife, who was born and brought up in Hamworthy, a Hamworthy schoolgirl at that time, she was one of the people who was hosted by a French family over there. But yes, what a bygone time that does seem now. But going forward, there's a lot of interest in keeping things going. I will round this off now, thank you, Madam Mayor, is that there's a lot of interest in keeping things going. Now, I say this at a time when I think Brittany Ferries has just announced that the Barfleur won't be coming back for the summer, and it was already decided it won't be coming back in the winter as well for commercial reasons. So practically for physical, going back and forth, it will be March 22 that we're looking at to resume things. But I'm going to ask that doesn't sort of take us off a far-sighted view of this. which is the relationships are strong, and what we're looking for the money this year, next year, etc., is two particular things. One is to develop the online content, and frankly, this should have been being done anyway, really, even before COVID arrived, because the meetings, 1 or 2 a year or 2 or 3 a year that used to happen, actually the appetite is there for much more regular and frequent contact and sharing things, whether it's ornithology related, arts cultural related, sports related, much more things which is stills, photos, videos, and talking and so on that we can do online. And there needs to be a bit of work to actually sort of curate this and put it properly online and make it good quality. A bit of money is needed for that. And the second thing is actually events themselves. So however soon we can make those happen, some contribution from a budget that we may have towards events that obviously will ask funding from others as well. So I won't elaborate that further. I hope you're won over, if you aren't already, to the cause behind all of this and the deep history behind it all, and that this funding can be approved, but obviously subject, of course, to annual scrutiny, which is totally accepted. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Iyengar, thank you for that whistle and tour around that. That was brilliant, thank you. I've just got Councillor Slade and then Councillor Haynes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm absolutely delighted to support this. I think it's really important, more important than ever, that we maintain cultural, business and you know, leisure links with other places. I just would note that Poole only has one place it's linked with. Now, clearly Cherbourg is the perfect place because we are physically, you know, connected with them. But our sister towns have other places, and we do have wonderful historic links with places in Canada. And whilst I'm not suggesting that we'll go off on a bit of a jolly to Canada funded by the council, there are lots of ways that we could build on the relationships with other places that we have historic cultural links with. And I would love to see the town open its doors and open its minds to other places other than Cherbourg as time goes on, and really get involved with twinning with more places. I think it would be great for culturally, for tourism and for our children.
Thank you, Councillor Slade, for your input. Councillor Haynes, please, and then Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was actually just going to officially second the proposal for the request of 1,500 that Councillor Iyengar has put forward, and I'm also very glad to see that within that proposal that there will also be contributions from other partner organisations towards what I think is actually something we do and must keep going. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes, and for seconding and your words. Councillor Stribley, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's not quite in such ancient times, because I was a councillor when we actually twinned with Cherbourg, and we actually, in the first time round, so Mrs. Iyengar might have been a schoolgirl then, but so we go. There was consideration given to twinning with St John's in Newfoundland, because Poole and Christchurch too actually have extremely close links with Newfoundland, and the apprentices from Dorset who were sent out there, and there's an amazing history, but it was just deemed that crossing the Atlantic was a little bit too far for a twinning visit, but I did go on a visit there with a number of other members some years ago. Simply amazing, the connections between. But there is a very active, or certainly was very active, Wessex Newfoundland Society, which really is perhaps wider than Poole, but Bournemouth didn't exist in those days.
That was very good.
And I'm not being mentioned it, but it is an amazing connection, particularly with Newfoundland, other parts of Canada, but the cod trade that we were so famous for, and the cod which you will find on the marbled fireplaces in the Mansion House, and the prosperity of Poole was built on the cod trade that all came from Newfoundland and the Grand Banks. I could bore you for hours on
No,
it.
please, you're not boring us. I'm just conscious we do have to. Oh, Graham's pen. Sorry. Okay, thank you all for your input. Was there anyone else? Oh, Councillor Brooks. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm more than happy to support the request from Councillor Iyengar and twinning. I think it is so important, especially in these times. But I'd also like to update you on the Wessex Newfoundland Society, because as a former member, and when my wife was Mayor of Poole, we had the privilege of going over with the Wessex Newfoundland Society to St John's to see the completed mirror house that was representing the families that went out there. And Alan Perry was the motivator of that. And we also were invited out a few years later to celebrate the 400th anniversary of the relationship and the setting up of Newfoundland itself. Sadly, because the membership was aging, as it always does, of the Wessex Newfoundland Society, its chief driver was Ian Andrews, former town clerk of Poole. Sadly now it has disbanded but become part of another organisation to try to keep its name forward. And I think it would be a real tribute to the people of Poole and those who have been involved in the Wessex Newfoundland Society in the past to see if we could set up a twinning with them and with people in St John's. I know they would certainly welcome it to continue the communications and the history and the news that comes over from time to time in the journals. And of course, with the onset of digital world, it doesn't necessitate visiting as such, and it would be a wonderful experience, I think, for everyone else. So I would be more than happy to propose that we look at the possibility of twinning with St John's in Newfoundland to carry on that great tradition that there has been over the centuries between the two areas.
Thank you, Councillor Brooke. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Stribley seconding that. Pardon? We can't do it. Why?
Can I, apologies, Madam Mayor, but through you before we move that, twinning, creating an establishment of twinning towns formally is actually a BCP council function. It's a principal council authority. Now, there would be nothing to stop the Charter Trustees starting that dialogue, establishing some communications and then making a recommendation. But I believe, and I'm pretty confident on this, 99% sure that Charter Trustees are not able to establish twinning arrangements. It would have to be a BCP function.
Councillor Brooks wants to come in if that's okay.
May I come back on that?
Yes.
And just say that I would be more than happy to propose that we recommend to BCP Council that we twin, and I'd be more than happy to help start and kick that process off.
That's perfectly okay then. Thank you, Councillor Brooks, for taking that on.
And it would be wonderful if someone could breathe life back into the Wessex Newfoundland Society. I didn't realise it had actually disbanded.
Thank you, Councillor Stribley. Now I need, for Mr Jones, we need clarification of the context.
Councillor Iyengar, apologies for this, we could have had dialogue before. In terms of the budget, the £1,500 budget that is there that you're asking to transfer or grant to the Twinning Association, ordinarily that fund would cover other incidentals of the Charter Trustees. That could be hosting, but I think that might be covered by your suggestion that host families on arrangements might do those sorts of issues. But clearly this would eliminate any budget that you've then got as Charter Trustees to fund any overseas travel. Now, I think as Charter Trustees you may say that should be funded by the individuals themselves travelling. And if I can give an example, in Christchurch we did a similar arrangement, and apologies for going to preceding councils, but we granted the Twinning Association, who made all the arrangements for the twinning arrangements for accommodation, both in the overseas venues and here, and they funded and made arrangements for all of the costs. Where there was anything over and above, then again, that was funded by the individuals who travelled. So I just thought from an operational point of view, because clearly this will take out that line from the budget, just clarification on those arrangements.
So, do you want to do an abridged version of that, please, Richard, so as we've got the general gist?
Very abridged then. This will remove all of the budget from, not remove the budget, it will be there, but you're gifting it to the association to make all of those arrangements for twinning activities. There would not then be another burden of cost to the Charter Trustees in addition to the £1,500.
Please do, Councillor Younger.
Right. And to my knowledge, there isn't another burden anywhere currently, is there?
No, there isn't, but that money could have been spent, for instance, on the Charter Trustees funding the mayor or another dignitary going overseas or hosting. And this would remove that ability if we were to grant that money.
I think
I think I understand that, and that sounds fine.
Yeah, I don't think we were planning on going on a jolly with it. I think it was literally to get everything in motion with the videoing and things like that. Am I right, Councillor Younger?
Can I have a
Please
go?
do.
Thank you for that. So, with this money, 1,500 granted to the association, there's no intention for the association to come back and ask for more from the trustees. Yeah, there isn't. I'm saying that. Is that's correct? Is it?
It is that, but it's also that there isn't an expectation that the Charter Trustees, and I think the Mayor just covered that, there's not an expectation that Charter Trustees will be funding a travel to France, for instance, because there won't be anything left in the budget.
Right.
Okay,
so
that's fine.
It's everything.
It's everything.
Just to confirm, so is this a payment of that money, or is it an ability for them to direct the spending, just to be clear?
Please, Dan, do.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, yes, I think the reference to Financial Regulation 5.8 might just clarify it. So, Financial Regulation 5.8 refers to when the Charter Trustees want to give a grant to another organisation. So, I think the idea of this item 12 is that the £1,500 base budget you've got for twinning becomes a grant that you pay on an annual basis, subject to review, to the Twinning Association.
Yes.
And that will be the only cost that the Charter Trustees incur to do with twinning.
See, that's clear. Thank you, Dan. Councillor Slade.
At your discretion, because I have already spoken, may I ask a question?
You may.
Whilst I accept that Regulation 5.8 allows us to make a single grant to an organisation, should the Charter Trustees be minded to fund the Mayor or other member of the civic party using some of the base budget for other purposes, that would be allowed, I presume, as long as it was approved by the full Charter Trustees. So it wouldn't prevent the Charter Trustees funding the Mayor visiting, but it wouldn't be acceptable if that was being paid for by the Twinning Association because they've had their bite of the cherry. Have I understood that right? So we could fund the Mayor.
Anyone, Dan? Sorry, anyone?
So I think the grant to the Charter Trustees of the £1,500 will then be used by the Charter Trustees for the sort of activities that we've just heard about. Should the Twinning Association want to spend more of their own funds that they've got on whatever activities they like, whether that be paying for me to go to Sugar, that would be within their gift as an organisation. If the Charter Trustees wanted to spend money, they could look to their hospitality budgets and things like that, which again are your budgets within your gift to spend. It's provided the cash is there.
Dan, thank you so much. We are really going to miss you. Just putting it out there. Okay, so are we able to go to the vote now? Thank you. So everyone in favour? Yay. That's unanimous. It is granted. Thank you so much for everyone attending and all the input It was my first meeting and it was really, really good, even with our blips, which are probably more mine than anyone else's. So thank you all for attending and helping me tonight. Thank you.
Would you please stand whilst the Civic Party retires? Thank you.